Hi, welcome to some Christmas ideas with GourmetQuilter. We're having a whole lot of fun. This is part of our 2020 series, so we're doing 20 Christmas ideas as part of the 20 things that we're doing in 2020, and each has 20 parts. So we are actually up to the very final part of this Christmas one. We're up to part 20. So there's a pattern on GourmetQuilter.com in case you're interested. It's a downloadable pattern for all the 20 ideas come in the one pattern, and there's a video for each part. With this time we are making this very, very cute little Christmas basket. How cute is that? So, and I've put a little holly. Do you recognise the holly? We had holly previously. So the idea is that it's got this nice handle. You can fill it up with all sorts of goodies, and then the handle, because it's on these little loops here, it just drops it out of the way. So then you've just got this very cute looking little basket just sitting there. So I think we'll just go ahead and get started with making it. So we've got some stiffening in the rim here of the basket, and also in the handle itself, to just keep things a nice shape. So to do the stiffening we are using this product here, which is called, it's a boning. So it's the sort of thing, if you can imagine, you know, in corsets of days gone by and other things that were all beautifully boned. This is a synthetic one, but this is a boning. It comes by the yard, by the metre. So I've already cut my pieces, so there's boning in the handle and there's boning in the rim as well. So we're going to start off making the handle strap. We're not going to attach it yet, but we're just going to get it made first. So I've already cut a lot of pieces out and done a little bit of preparation here. So we needed a strip of fabric. We're going to have a bright green one this time. We needed a strip of fabric. We needed a shorter strip of batting. We needed to press in just the ends of the strip of fabric, at both ends, just 1/4 of an inch or so, and we also needed to press in 1/4 of an inch along one long edge. And that will help us hugely. And then we can pop the piece of batting. This does happen to be a lightly fusible batting. You don't need a fusible batting, however, this one is. So I'm just not going to iron the batting because we don't want that actually ironed. So we want the batting to sit inside. So, and we also want this edge for the batting to be pretty much level with the edge. So if it's wanting to sort of creep out a little bit, once you've got it seated in there, then I suggest that you just trim it off so that that edge is nice, because we're just folding that in, but it will help us if it's got a nice edge on it. So we're just pressing, and I've as I said, I've kind of done some of this already, but I'll just show you anyway. We just want to press that fold in all the way down, but not stick it all together because I've got this fusible batting. And then we're going to be wanting to press the other edge in so that this folded edge here comes over and sits. It should sit actually just past centre, because we want to stitch up the centre. So if we've got the little fold lines in, it will help us a lot, because we have to position the boning in there before we do the stitching. We can do this. So I've got it all pressed. I've got this has got this the raw edge. It's going in, and we've got that one pressed, so that we could just simply stitch that down and have a strap without boning, but we're going to put boning in today. So I've got these two lengths here. They're the same length as the batting, and we want to sew with the one with the raw edge. We want to position that one in first. Not that it makes a huge difference. So we're going to clip that one in place. So you want to push the boning into that fold. That's why we needed to iron that fold in. So you want to make sure that it's seated within the length. A little bit fiddly, but we can do it. So just put a few clips along just to hold it right into that fold, so that it's out of the way of the middle when we're going to stitch down, because we can just have it all ready and just stitch it once. That's pretty amazing. And then we want to bring this other one with the turned edge over as well, but we want to stick the other piece into that fold there. So we will get there. Because we're going to stitch between the two. Very soon. So that it should be about the same length as your batting, so that's all working. That part of it seems to be working really well. Okay, so we've got that all sitting nicely in place. Now we're going to stitch it, as I said, up the middle there, so just close to the folded edge there, but we're going to start and stop where the batting and the boning starts and stops. We want to just leave these end bits open for the time being. So I'll go to the machine and stitch this. Now if you can think of what it might be like to train an octopus with arms going everywhere, that's kind of a little bit like this boning. Kind of wants to be everywhere all at once. Feels like I'm trying to train an octopus. So I'm just coming straight up the middle. And that's sewing between the two pieces of boning, which will allow them to sit nicely in there. The little bit of batting just gives it a nice little softness, and also kind of just fills up any little gaps that are there. It's got a really nice feel, this little handle. You probably can't see a thing now. There's that octopus again. So you can see already we've got a nice looking handle. It's already shaped for us. It's all sitting really nicely, and that's all we have to do at the moment. We'll come back and do more to that nearer the end when we've got all the other bits done. So the next thing we want to do is get the little loops ready. So that's these little bits that the handle will sew onto. So they're simply a piece of fabric folded. I fold the raw edges into the middle, and then I fold that over, and then they just need stitching. So I'll go ahead and do that, because then we're going to position them into the piece that makes that little stand up bit. So I'll just go ahead and get these stitched. You don't need to watch me doing some little straight stitching, and then we can I'll show you how to make the next bit. So I've gone ahead and I've just done a line of stitching either side on the loop strips, and I pinned one in place here. So this is the fabric strip that we need to make this rim, and we need to sew the little loops into the top of it. So that it needs to be a double piece of fabric or two pieces of fabric, so that we can have the seam at the top for these. So I've made markings. I've got a center marking and then an even distance apart, and then for where I'm actually going to put the little loops, and we're just going to pin them in place, and then I'm going to do a little holding stitch to hold them in place so that they don't move. And then I'm also going to just show you, we need to join this boning into a circle, and you can sew through this, so that's fine. So we're just going to overlap it, and then I'm just going to pop that in the sewing machine. So it's a little bit tricky, like I said, we're trying to train an octopus here, but it all works. So I'll just do this one here so that you can see that it is entirely possible. I haven't changed anything on the machine. I'm just overlapping those two, keeping them straight if possible, and I'm just stitching on it. So I'll just go backwards and forwards a few times to make sure it's held together. It's not tidy, but nobody's going to see it. So now I've got my two rings ready, and these I just need to stitch these on, just a little holding stitch, so maybe only 1/8 of an inch in, just to hold those little loops in place. So that's looking pretty good. And so now we need to stitch these two pieces right sides together, just with a regular 1/4 inch seam all the way along there, including the little ends of the loops, so that we can then open that out, and we have to pop some batting in as well. So I'll go ahead and I'll get this stitched, and I will show you what we're going to do with it next. So I've sewn my seam, my little loops are sticking out, so I'm just going to press the seam one way, the way that it wants to go, with those little handles sitting there. So I guess at this stage, if you didn't want the long handle, you could consider making these loops a little bit wider apart and just having a short basket with little handle loops on the side. I quite like the long handle so that you can carry it around, but sometimes we need things for different uses. So I've got that all pressed with the seam going one way. It's a little bit inconvenient with these little bits here because they won't let me press it all completely flat. And then I just need to put a piece of batting in behind that, and then we're going to press that seam over. So in fact it might be helpful to press that over again now, because that's going to be the top edge, that seamed piece there. And sometimes it's easier if it's already been pressed when you come to do it, especially when it's got a piece of batting in it. So now I just need to put the piece of batting behind, and then with the batting as well, we need to join that up into a loop just with our 1/4 inch. So I'll go ahead and get that all ready and show you how we put the little boning inside it. Okay, so I've joined it into a loop. I've pressed the seam open just so that it stays as flat as possible, and we already had pre-pressed that fold. It doesn't really want to stay there, and now we're going to start on the octopus training. This is the real octopus training. So we've got our circle made up of our boning, and we need to sit it inside against the fold, so against that top edge, and it will want to wriggle around. So the best thing I've found is to clip it as we go. So it needs to push right into that fold. It's going to be quite tight, but that's what helps give it the nice shape. So we're just going to stitch one of these in at a time. So we have to do this octopus training twice. So that should be sitting quite firmly up against that top edge with the seam in it there. If you think you need to put any more in. So you can see that that's holding a nice circle shape already. So I'm going to stitch that now, and I'm going to stitch it, I'm probably going to stitch it from this way, because it's in a loop. We just have to rotate it around, and it doesn't really matter where you start and stop. And I'm going to come in probably about, this boning's about 1/2 inch wide, so I'm going to come in about 5/8 of an inch so that I'm well clear of it, and it gives it a nice little channel. And I've got a 5/8 of an inch mark on my on the plate on the machine, so that's really helpful at times like this. So I'm just going to, you probably can't see a lot with all that there, but I'll just go round at that 5/8 inch all the way around, taking the clips out as I get to them, making sure that that boning is staying right up in that top edge, and it's sitting there really nicely. So I'll go ahead and get this done, and then we have to do exactly the same thing with the next one, so I'll show you some of that one as well. So I've done that line of stitching, it's sitting really nicely. Now we've got to put the next one in. So again, we push that in up to the line we've just stitched, and again we'll do some clips, and there should be plenty of seam allowance sitting this side of it so that we can stitch again at about the 5/8 of an inch again. So I just thought you'd want to see how it looks at this stage, and it looks much the same as it looked before, only perhaps just a little bit easier to contain because it knows what it's doing now. And the other thing we need to do on this rim, if you wanted to do the little bit of, well, it's like the little flanges we've been doing, you might call it a piping, that piece also needs to go on to this piece here. So I've already made that. It was just a narrow strip of fabric that I folded in half, and I've joined it into a loop as well, ready to go on. So we'll be putting it on so that all the raw edges are together, so that when it's all sewed into the seam, that piece will actually just sit up onto that. And what that will do is if we stitch this first before we put that on, and then if there's a little line of sewing that's sitting there, this kind of masks over it, so it's quite convenient really to have a flange. So I'll go ahead and get all this on, and I will then get the flange on as well so that you can see how that all sits. So I've done my 2 lines of sewing, and now I'm just putting the little flange around the edge as well so that everything's in place. It's coming together. So I always find it easier to sew inside the circle, and this, the way we make it, apart from putting the flange on, it doesn't matter which, they're both the same inside and out until we put the flange on. So now we can turn it out so that we can see that it's sitting quite nicely. We've got little handles that we could, as I said, use. You could make them just slightly further apart if you just wanted to leave those as handles. But I'm going to put the long handle on. But so that's all looking really good now. That's ready. The handle's ready, but we'll put the handle on later because it'll just get in the way otherwise. So now we need to make the bottom part of the bag. So I've done some quilting already. These little panels are already quilted. And then there's a lining inside as well. So we'll go ahead and have a look here. So I've already started cutting some of it out, but I thought you'd like to just see. What I've done is just quilt a piece of fabric just straight onto the batting without the lining. The lining is going to go in as a separate piece. It doesn't need to have anything on the back. And then, so I had just joined in the pattern. There's 2 halves, and they just need to be joined to get the actual shape. So I've already cut mine out. So what I found to be the easiest way to do it was to simply give myself a straight edge to put that edge onto. So I just trim a little bit in from the edge of my quilting so that I've got a nice straight edge. So I've already cut my other 2 out, but I thought you'd want to see how this all goes. Now you can cut them both together. You have to ignore my scribbles on my piece of paper. I've been writing notes all over it. Or you could cut them separately. You can draw them on and cut them, or you can use your rotary cutter as you've seen me do other times with this sort of cutting. So that I'm just going to cut around that shape, and I'm going to do it like this, but you might prefer to do it a different way if you're not so sure about using a rotary cutter like this. You might prefer to do it on the single layer, not the double. It is quite thick with the batting in double, but it also gets it done. So you just want to make sure nothing moves, and always cut away from you. Just cut carefully. Don't have your fingers in the way. And it's basically as simple as that. So now I'm going to do the same as I've done here. I'm going to alternate a red and a green colour. And so we want to put these together in pairs now. So they need to be both the same. So you put the green on top and the green on top. And we're just going to stitch the seam all the way down to the point on both of them. And then we can open that out. Then they'll be in pairs. And then we can join the pair together in one long seam all the way around. So I'll go ahead and get this part done. So just one side seam of both pairs with them both sitting the same way up, and then opening that out and joining the 2 together in the one long seam all the way around. So I've got my 2 halves of my basket together, just down that one side, and now they've got to go together as well. So now we can go all the way around, just leaving the straight edge open all the times, the curved ones we're sewing. So it's all looking quite exciting. We've got it inside out still at the moment. And the lining, we do exactly the same thing on the lining. We join that into pairs. I've already done mine. We join it into pairs, and then the long seam just the same. Just take a slightly larger than 1/4 inch seam allowance on the lining because it's going to be sitting inside, and we don't want it too full. The only difference with the lining is that you do need to leave a gap in one of the seams for turning. So you need to leave it, what I've done is leave it on this sort of straight part of the point here. It'll be marked in the pattern so you'll be able to see, and leave it reasonably large, like a good, what have we got there? We've got it about 4 inches long because we've got to pull the whole thing through, including the octopus. So what we need to now do is, so we have this one sitting like this, we've got our handles. Now we do want to position the handle on opposite sides. I've put them on the green side, it doesn't really matter, you can decide, but we need to just mark the centre there so that we can position them on the sides. And it's quite helpful at this stage also to mark the centre of each side so that we can get the circle marked also into 1/4 points, so that we've got some little points where, so that we know it's all going to fit in quite comfortably, because just sometimes you have to do a little bit of easing with these sorts of things, and if you've got some points marked, that's actually quite helpful. So I've 1/4 pointed the lining, I've done it to the ring, and I've done it to the little basket. So we're going to put this inside. So we've got this one obviously inside out. We're going to put this one so that the right side goes against the right side of this, and you need to just decide where your handles are going, whether they're going on the, in my case, green or the red. I'm going to put them on the green, similar to what I have done here. And then also, as well as that, we need to put the lining in as well. So the lining is out the right way, and that goes in there too. So it's all a little bit, seems like a lot of things to work out, but it all makes sense when you're actually doing it. So I'm just going to pop a pin in here just to hold it together. And then I'm going to pop the lining in as well before we finish putting, we can pop clips around here, they don't have to be pins. But it all should fit reasonably well. It's just sometimes you have to ease a little bit if it's not quite right coming around with things like this, but it's actually fitting amazingly well. So because of the boning in there, it's not so easy to pin into. So now I'm going to pop this inside, and I am going to use the clips this time. So I can mark those points and then pop a clip in. Just so you need to make sure that all your raw edges are together, and we can put another clip in where the seams are as well. So this is coming together really well. So once this is all clipped together, we can go around and stitch it all. So I've got it clipped all the way around, things are sitting quite nicely there, so I'm ready to sew it now. So we just need to make sure that all those edges are staying together, and they're looking pretty good at the moment. Let's hope they stay that way. So same thing, we've got to pop it in here and just rotate it round as we can. So you want to make sure that you're getting all the raw edges in, and that so take your 1/4 inch seam, but if you're going to err on the one way or the other, make it slightly more generous than 1/4 inch, but not too much more. You don't really want to make a great big seam, but like we do a scant 1/4 inch, we want to go on just the other way, just to make sure that everything is included in the seam properly. So just take your time. Keep checking that everything's sitting together, and stitch all the way around the loop. So I'll keep going. You've seen what I'm doing now, and then I'll show you how we turn it out and put the handle on. So I've done all the sewing around there. Now I did go around a second time. I found that that was quite helpful, right next to, like just really not on top, but right next to, but slightly in towards the bag, just to make sure that all those edges are caught in as evenly as possible all the way around, because it's quite cumbersome going around that first time, so a second one just gives us a smoother line. So now we just have the fun of turning out this little octopus in here. So remember, we left a gap in the lining, so we've just got to pull all this through. And again, this boning is reasonably cooperative. It will bend and pull through. I promise you it will. It's certainly pleased we don't have to wear clothes with boning in most of the time these days. And then we can push all these seams out. We're nearly done. We've only got to put the handle on, really. Just close up that gap in there. So whilst you can still get your hand in there, it's probably a good thing to push those seams. We can't really get in to press them. So it's kind of a little squarish sort of basket. It's kind of cute. So that's all looking pretty good. I am just going to try and press around that edge there, so I'm going to turn it inside out to do that, so you can see what's going on here. It's really cute with that little flange in there. I like that. So I'm really just going to give it a little press just so that that seam is pressed. Just have to watch those little handles. We're not trying to press those particularly. Again, it's just to make sure that seam sits nicely there. And it's all sitting really well, actually. So I think we'll leave it at that for now. I've got to close the little gap, and I'm going to hand stitch that closed so I can do that a little bit later. You need to watch me do all the little hand sewing on it. And that's sitting in. So if you wanted to secure that in there, you could easily match the centre in the bottom and stitch it. You could probably get it into the machine and do a circle or something in the base if you wanted to hold it. I think once that's settled and you start using it, that will just stay in there really nicely. So for me, I don't think I would worry too much about that. Now we just need to get these handles on. So we've made the handle to this stage and we left these ends out here. So we just need to press them. So we had already pressed in the 1/4 inch there, and we've got that one pressed in. And so we could just leave them sort of straight, but what I found was probably just a little bit better was to just bring that edge across and bring that one across a little bit, just so that it narrows in a little bit there at the end. And then press that, because what we're actually going to be doing is popping that in here, and because we've got the nice folded edge already, and then we're just going to bring it up to where the batting and the bone finished and stitch it across. In fact, I can do it right now so that you can see. And that's pretty much all we have to do. Do this to both ends of the handle. So just below the boning or on the boning, it wouldn't matter particularly. And then I just like to reverse back across so that it's double stitched. And then I just have to do the same thing on the other end, and we'll be finished. It's such a fun little basket. I love the shape of the way it's come up. So we had that, and we just pulled it across a little bit so that it was on a bit of an angle. Did the same with this one. Just brings it into a little bit of a taper, which just means it is going to sit inside when we flip it over there. So we now just make sure you're doing it to the inside of the handle. So you thread that in from the outside, and we'll stitch across there. We'll get this one on so that we can have a good look at it all finished. This octopus is definitely an octopus. I'm quite convinced I would know how to train an octopus after this. The beauty of the boning is of course that it holds its shape. The tricky bit is it's trying to hold its shape while I'm trying to reshape it. But it springs back into shape really nicely. So it's actually a really good, I've used this in all sorts of things because it gives you that nice little straightforward rim there. So I've just got to sew my inside up, which you don't need to see me do. We've got our little basket. I think that's just absolutely gorgeous, and when I put some gifts in it holds a surprising amount. If you wanted to, you could pop a little holly on, that kind of makes it quite festive. Maybe not on the bit with the same though. And other than that, what a great little basket. You could use it for so many things. You could use it as a gift basket, you could put bread in it, you could fill it with fabric, you could fill it with jam, you could fill it with cakes, muffins, oh, all of those things. Look, do you know, there's so much room in there. You could just fit so much in there. So that was our final one for this series, for all the Christmas ideas. I'll just pin this on because I think it looks cute. Maybe. And so that was number 20. So there won't be any more Christmas ideas. There are more things coming with 2020 with GourmetQuilter. If you're interested, please do have a look at the website, GourmetQuilter.com. And other than that, Merry Christmas. We've done placemats, we've done cutlery holders, we've done Santas, we've done so much that Christmas is just going to be so much fun. Please do enjoy them, and please do visit GourmetQuilter.com, and thank you.